What if the ship that started this war was never supposed to sink at all? Because somewhere between one burning container ship and 3 nights of American airstrikes, something changed that cannot be undone. Before we go further, if you want to understand exactly how a closed strait turned into 3 nights of fire, hit that like button right now. Because it helps this video reach more people who need to see this. And if you are new here, subscribe. Because what happens in the next few minutes is only the beginning of this story. Let's start with the ship, because everything else in this story grows out of that one burning deck. Iran and the United States had just signed something rare. A memorandum of understanding. Not a peace treaty, not a permanent deal, just 60 days. 60 days where Iran promised one simple thing. Keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Let commercial ships pass safely. No charge, no conditions, no games. In exchange, the region would get a short window of calm. A pause. A chance for both sides to breathe. For a moment, it looked like it might hold. Shipping companies recalculated their risk. Insurance rates dropped slightly. Analysts allowed themselves a small hope that maybe, just maybe, this fragile arrangement could survive. 60 days does not sound like much when you say it out loud. But in a region where a single missile can shut down a shipping lane that carries 1/5 of the world's oil, 60 days of calm is worth more. Fuel prices at gas stations thousands of miles away depend on ships moving freely through that narrow stretch of water. Factories depend on it. Airlines depend on it. Entire national budgets, built around expected oil revenue, depend on ships being able to pass through without fear. That is why this small, modest agreement mattered so much more than its simple wording suggested. Then, a container ship called the GFS Galaxy caught fire. It was flying a Cyprus flag. It had a civilian crew. It was moving through international waters, doing exactly what the agreement said it was allowed to do. And then its engine room exploded into flame. The crew had no choice but to abandon ship. One sailor is still missing at sea. Iran's answer to this disaster was not an apology. It was not an investigation. It was a declaration. Iran's naval forces claimed the ship had strayed onto an unauthorized route. And because of that, the entire Strait of Hormuz was now closed. Closed, according to Iran, by Iran's own authority, as if one country could simply announce that an international shipping lane now belonged to them alone. Then came a warning shot at a second vessel, freezing it dead in the water. Then came a statement from Iran's naval commander on state television, declaring that no foreign ship could pass through without being tracked. And here is where the story becomes almost impossible to believe if you did not see it happen in real time. The Speaker of Iran's own parliament, the very official whose signature had helped make the 60-day agreement legally binding, posted the exact wording of the safe passage promise on social media. He posted it as proof that Iran was following the rules. He posted it while the GFS Galaxy was still burning. He posted it while American fighter jets were already in the air, already flying toward their targets. Think about that for a second. The man responsible for the agreement was quoting the agreement to defend the very actions that broke it. That is not diplomacy. That is theater, performed for an audience that was never going to believe it anyway. And while he typed his message about a new era beginning, an era where he claimed one-sided deals were finally over, the American response was already airborne. Fighter jets were already climbing. Targeting systems were already locking. The era he thought he was declaring had already ended, just not in the direction he imagined. What followed over the next 3 nights was not a single strike. It was not a warning shot. It was a campaign, and campaigns have structure. They build, they escalate. They are designed piece by piece to remove an enemy's ability to fight back before the fighting even starts. Night 1 hit roughly 80 targets. These were not random. They were chosen because they represented the most immediate danger to commercial ships. Coastal radar stations that could see and track vessels, communication relays that passed targeting information, fast attack boat bases that could strike ships within minutes of being given a target. Night 1 was not trying to destroy everything. It was trying to blind and deafen the network first. Every radar tower destroyed on Night 1 was a radar tower that could not see the aircraft coming back on Night 2. Every communication line cut was a line that could not carry a warning about what was coming next. Night 2 expanded to around 90 targets. With the coastal surveillance system already damaged, American aircraft could now reach deeper. Ammunition storage sites, naval support facilities, places that would have been too dangerous to strike on Night 1 because they were too well protected by an air defense network. Night 1's damage is what made Night 2 possible. Night 3 was the largest by far, about 140 targets in a single night. Missile and drone launch platforms, the exact places used to fire weapons at commercial ships and regional targets. Naval infrastructure needed to physically carry out any strait closure. Ammunition depots, burning down the supply that future attacks would depend on. Communication networks, collapsing what little coordination remained. And coastal surveillance, taking away the eyes Iran needed to see any ship at all. All 5 of these categories were hit at once, on the same night, in the same operation. That timing matters more than people realize. When you strike everything simultaneously, the enemy cannot choose what to defend first. Because every part of their network is under attack at the exact same moment. Nothing gets protected because everything is burning. One base deserves special attention here because it explains what Iran actually built along its coastline. This facility sits right at the edge of the strait's approach, giving it a direct line of sight over one of the busiest shipping corridors. It was never just one radar. It was layers of surveillance, early warning towers, large antenna systems, and at least one radar dish deliberately hidden so no outside observer could tell which direction it was watching. Fuel storage at this base kept the fast boats running. Communication lines carried targeting information. This base did not fire missiles. It watched. It found. It passed the information along to whoever would pull the trigger. In simple terms, it was the eyes of the entire coastal strike system, and you cannot hit a ship you cannot see. That is exactly why it was hit, and hit hard along with dozens of places just like it. Now, here is something almost nobody is talking about, something buried inside the footage released after these strikes. Among all the videos CENTCOM made public, one single clip stood out for what it did not show. One target in one strike was deliberately blurred out before release. Everything else was shown in full detail. Ammunition exploding in secondary blasts, radar towers absorbing missile hits and going dark, trucks loaded with drone equipment getting destroyed, surveillance buildings collapsing, but one target was hidden. That is never an accident. Every piece of footage released by a military organization like this goes through review. If something gets blurred, it is because showing it clearly would reveal more than the military wants an enemy to know. Maybe it exposes a method of finding targets that is still being used right now. Maybe it reveals a strike whose full meaning is meant to stay secret until the timing is right. Whatever it is, that blurred frame is the clearest hint available of what comes next in this campaign. And it sits inside footage of the single largest night, the night that hit 140 targets at once. That timing is not random either. Now let's talk about the weapons themselves. American fighter jets were seen carrying multiple small guided rocket pods, a weapon built specifically for fast, small targets. Fast boats. Trucks carrying drone launchers, the kind of mobile threat that survives when fixed buildings do not. Choosing to load this weapon after 3 nights of destroying coastal infrastructure sends a clear message. The next phase of this fight is not about buildings anymore. It is about whatever is left that can still move. Alongside that, some aircraft carried a dual-guided bomb, one that can switch from laser guidance to satellite guidance mid-flight. This matters because Iran's air defense network, while badly damaged, is not completely gone. If a pilot has to break away suddenly to avoid a missile, a normal laser-guided bomb would miss its target. This newer weapon does not have that problem. It simply switches to satellite tracking and still hits its mark. That is a weapon built for exactly this kind of fight. A fight against a wounded but still dangerous opponent. Here is our next moment to pause. If this story is pulling you in, tap that subscribe button now. Because the next part of this changes how you think about who actually has the upper hand in this conflict. Drop a comment telling me one word, just one word, that describes how you feel about what Iran's own leaders did. Now let's talk about the part of this story that gets almost no attention, but matters just as much as any airstrike. The sea mines. You can destroy every radar tower, every ammunition depot, every communication relay, and it will not remove a single mine already sitting quietly underwater. A mine needs no radar to guide it, no communication signal to trigger it, no functioning base to launch it. It simply waits. And Iran is believed to have placed roughly 80 of them somewhere inside the strait or its surrounding waters. Clearing mines is slow, dangerous work. It usually requires either a full stop to hostilities, so minesweeping ships can move safely, or missions carried out while still under fire from remaining coastal defenses, which is its own kind of nightmare. 300 targets destroyed on land does nothing to solve this problem from the air. 800 commercial ships managed to pass through the strait despite Iran's closure claim. But they passed through corridors that still carry real risk from a threat that airstrikes simply cannot reach. This is the honest part of the story that gets buried under the impressive numbers. The campaign has been remarkably effective. It has not been complete. And this is exactly why insurance companies have not simply relaxed and gone back to normal pricing. War risk premiums stay elevated even when the airstrikes are working entirely in America's favor, because a mine does not care how many radar towers went dark the night before. Shipping companies plan around worst-case scenarios. A tanker captain does not feel safer because targets were destroyed on land if there is still a chance his hull meets something floating. That single detail, 80 mines still unaccounted for, is the quiet asterisk sitting next to every impressive number. Let's step back now and look at the bigger picture, because Iran's ballistic missile launches reveal something they want to hide. Iran has released plenty of footage showing missiles launching, flags waving, soldiers saluting at the moment of ignition. What Iran has not released is footage of these missiles actually hitting their targets, because most are not getting through. Interception rates show the overwhelming majority of these launches failing to achieve anything close to what Iran claims. That is exactly why the footage stops at launch and never continues to impact. You do not hide the video of your own success. There's one weapon in Iran's arsenal that deserves more respect, and that is a sea-skimming anti-ship cruise missile, based on an older Chinese design, but still genuinely dangerous. Unlike a ballistic missile that arcs high into the sky, this missile flies low, right along the surface of the water, which gives defenders a much shorter window to detect and stop it. This is the real threat that remains, and it is exactly why every coastal radar site and communication relay being destroyed matters. You cannot fire a missile you cannot aim, and you cannot aim a missile if the eyes have already gone dark. Now here is where this story connects to something happening thousands of miles away, in a completely different country. Dutch intelligence services recently exposed a spying operation where hackers had quietly taken control of internet-connected cameras, doorbell cameras, home security systems, devices still running the default password they came with from the factory. These hacked cameras were positioned along routes used to move military equipment, and they gave real-time, ground-level video. Dutch investigators pointed out this is the same technique believed to have been used to track and locate senior leadership. A cheap camera, a default password, left unchanged by whoever installed it, turned into an effective intelligence tool. Think about what that actually means. This is not some rare, futuristic spy technology available only to elite agencies. It is sitting on the wall outside your own front door right now, in a device most people never bother to secure, and it has already changed the outcome of a real war. Let's return now to the diplomatic mess at the center of this. Iran signed an agreement. Iran broke that agreement within weeks. Iran's own negotiator posted the text as proof of innocence. And then Iran's supreme leader publicly claimed it was the United States who had violated the deal. This is not really a legal argument anymore. It is a communications strategy aimed at an audience the regime needs to convince. American forces are not waiting around for this legal argument to be settled. Every strike package moves forward regardless. The missing sailor from the GFS Galaxy is not waiting for Iran's version of events to be validated either. So where does the strait actually stand right now in practical terms? The southern half is effectively under safe passage. The northern half remains more dangerous, both because some coastal positions have not yet been fully struck, and because those 80 or so mines are still sitting somewhere in the water, unaffected by any airstrike. 300 targets destroyed is a massive achievement. It is not the finish line. There is one more piece of this puzzle that almost never gets mentioned. The aircraft carrier sitting in the Arabian Sea. A carrier like this is not just a floating airport. It is a moving target that cannot be pinned down. A fixed base on land stays in one place. A carrier does not stay still. It was in different positions every night. Any targeting information Iran manages to gather is already outdated by the time it could ever be used. This mobility is what allows a campaign like this to be sustained night after night without giving Iran a fixed target. Compare that to Iran's own position. Iran's coastal bases cannot move. A radar tower built into a hillside stays put. An ammunition depot buried underground still sits at the same coordinates it occupied a decade ago. Every satellite pass, every surveillance flight, slowly builds a more complete picture of a target that never runs anywhere. That is the deep structural imbalance sitting underneath this entire campaign. One side is hunting a fixed picture. The other side is trying to hit a moving one, and that imbalance alone tells you everything about why this expanded. All right, before we get to the final part of this story, I need your help keeping this channel alive. Screenshot this moment and share it with one person who still thinks Iran actually controls the Strait of Hormuz. Now let's talk about something that connects everything together, and it tells you where this entire conflict is actually heading. Iran's military strength was never built on ballistic missiles alone. Real power came from a network of allied fighting groups. These groups gave Iran a way to pressure its enemies without ever admitting direct responsibility. But that network has been quietly falling apart. Yemen's fighters have faced sustained military pressure for months. Allied militia command structures inside Iraq have been repeatedly targeted and weakened. Lebanon's most powerful group has been hollowed out. Every one of these losses removed an option Iran once had, a way to apply pressure through someone else's hands. What we are watching now, the direct missile launches, the direct attacks on ships, is not Iran acting from strength. It is Iran acting because its safer, indirect options have been taken away one by one. When a country switches from proxy attacks to direct action, it is usually because they have run out of anything else to try. Think about what a proxy network actually gave Iran for all those years. Deniability, the ability to strike and shrug. That kind of deniability is worth more than most realize because it lets a country apply pressure without direct response. Take that shield away, and every remaining option starts pointing straight back at the regime itself. There is no one left to blame, no proxy left to hide behind, just Iran standing fully exposed. And this brings us to the real heart of the matter. Every missile Iran fires comes from a finite supply. These are not infinite stockpiles. They take time, money, and materials to build. And right now, resupply is under pressure. Rail routes have been damaged. A key port has been struck more than once. Oil revenue is being squeezed. An organization that keeps spending weapons it cannot replace against successful defenses is not on a path toward victory. It is on a path toward running out, and no amount of confident statements can change basic math like that. Wars are not only won by who fires first, they are often decided by who can still fire on the last night. Right now, one side is launching from a moving platform that can be resupplied at sea without touching Iranian soil. The other side is trying to rebuild a stockpile using routes that keep getting cut, funded by revenue that keeps shrinking. That is not a fair fight anymore. So here is the real question. How many more nights does this take? 300 targets are already gone. Does the number reach 400? 500? 1,000? Nobody can say for certain. But the direction is not in question. Every night, Iran's ability to threaten shipping grows weaker. Every depot that burns is inventory that cannot be rebuilt. Every radar that goes silent is awareness that cannot be regained. That trajectory only moves in one direction. It moves toward a moment where the gap becomes too wide to ignore. At that point, there are only two paths left. Accept a negotiated outcome or keep firing an emptying arsenal. Iran declared the strait closed. 800 ships proved that declaration was empty. 3 nights of strikes left ruins. And somewhere inside that footage, one blurred frame is still sitting there holding the answer to what comes after 300. The regime built its strategy around one assumption, that the world could not tolerate the cost of a closed strait. History gave Iran reason to believe it. Past confrontations had mostly ended in careful diplomacy and measured responses. But that history belonged to a different moment. The old rules do not apply anymore. 3 nights of fire are the clearest proof that anyone could ask for. 800 vessels moved safely. 400 million barrels of oil kept flowing. 300 military positions went dark, night after night. Every choice Iran made was met with a different kind of choice from the other side. Another target added to the list, and that is the story hiding underneath every headline. Not a single dramatic battle, but a slow accumulation of choices, until the gap between what Iran claimed and what Iran could actually still do became impossible to hide. One side kept talking about eras ending. The other side simply kept adding names to a list and crossing them off. No press conference. Just a methodical process that turned a burning ship into 300 destroyed positions. That is what real power looks like. Not the loudest voice on state television or the boldest claim posted online. It is the side that keeps showing up the next night, until the other side runs out of missiles to fire, and runs out of ways to pretend the strait was ever really closed at all. If you made it this far, you understand this conflict better than most. Subscribe now to see what the blurred frame was hiding.